Hello, welcome to section 3, part 4. We're going to cover some debug setup. It's not necessarily specific to the RTS player plugin. It's more a core thing that we're going to be setting up, but this is a good point to do it, so I'm just going to put it under this section. Debugging in general, it's a constant requirement. Anyone that's done anything, you're always adding debug logs and printer screens or whatever to try and figure out what's going on with your code. It's completely essential for when it comes time to fault find. One thing you want to do though is implement a permanent debugging solution rather than just randomly embedding logs and printer screens just randomly throughout your code. And this enables you later to just go back and do quick debugging later on when you go to interface with these previously implemented systems. You can just turn the debugging on and off and it's all there. And injecting random logs into your code everywhere and can't stop them or turn them off. You also don't want them to be exported into the production game later as well. So we're going to be using something called developer settings. This is a built-in Unreal class that they've put in. It allows you to easily implement a settings menu within the project settings. It allows you to easily save data to a configuration file. So we'll be implementing the developer settings. The developer settings sort of acts as like a singleton, if you've ever heard that term, but a singleton is basically a single instance of a class that you make globally available where you can just store data or references to something. And that's sort of what the developer settings act as. We're going to use that for our debug interface. I don't know if interface is the best word there. For our debugging, that's what we'll use. So we'll start by creating that setting. So I'm going to add an Unreal class and it's going to be under RTS core. And I'm just going to call it developer settings. I'll just call it settings. So developer settings it's not player settings, right? This is just for you as the developer to set settings in your game. And like if you've got a blueprint you need a reference or something like that, which later on we'll use it for a UI and stuff. But for now, we're just going to be using it for debug settings. So clearly just a developer thing. I'm going to put it under framework settings. And the class we're looking for is developer settings, backed by CBars. Is the class that we're going to inherit from. The first thing we want to do is we want to set up where we save this. So I'm going to call it, put in the default game config. So it's config game. So that'll put it, I'll just put default config here. There we go. And then, hey, what did that do? Game. I've got caps lock. So that's what we want. And then that'll then save the settings in the default game.ini. So you can specify a custom config file here. I'm not going to do that right now. In the project settings, it's going to come up as a menu. So we need to define what it's going to display as. So we can, just the display name in the menu. So we're going to call it RTS4. So that's that. And we're going to need a constructor. That's our constructor. And then it's just your parameters. So, and it's obviously going to need uProperty access for. So the first ones we're going to do is just general debugging on and off switches. So let's call it debugging plugins and uProperty. And we just need it to be, we have to tell it to save it to a config file. So that's just that config and then just edit anywhere. And we can put it in a category. I'll just put this as plugins. You'll see how all this comes up. So the first one is just going to be a Boolean, and we just want it to be for whether we're debugging RTS core or not. So what this will do, we'll sort of have two levels to debugging. We'll have one that you can just turn the debugging on for the whole plugin. And then later when we get into specific items, say we're going to debug the RTS core player state, there might be some debugs in there, and we'll have another bool that will be like debug the player state maybe. And so you can turn sections on and off. I'm going to default all these to false. So most of these will do nothing at the start, so we'll just put them in. So we've got our RTS core and RTS player, and that allows us to, or will allow us to turn off and on the debugging. Now before we go into using these settings, because we're using the developer settings, we actually need to come to our build file and add developer settings. Developer settings there, it'll link that correctly under private dependencies. And now we just want to add, so if you recall in the previous video, we added debug data, which was a logging category. We want to do the same for our RTS player. Come down to data, and I need a CPP file as well, so I'm just going to add an empty class. Call it debug data. We don't need the class, we just want the file. We're going to need an include, so I'll leave that there, but we can copy the include from this one. It's the same, the log macros. We can copy the log as well and just change it. So this log category will allow us to filter our log based on that category. So when we're debugging just RTS player, we'll be able to just filter under this name. As it expands, or if we get like a bigger plugin, perhaps you can add more categories to define down your logs, so you can find your logs easier. Not required, just helpful if you're potentially going to be doing a lot of logging. And now we want to use this log, but we want to use our developer settings and only display the logs or the. Well, let's create some tools first. So let's create some defines for just like logging something to the screen. So it just saves a bit of time or something. I'm just going to put this in a if statement. So, I'm going to put it under with editor. There's a few different ones of these, but basically what this does is says whatever's inside this, only compile it if it's the editor version. So when you actually build again, this will be excluded. So in here we want to define. Let's call it RTS player. Call this one tick. So this is going to be a printer screen that we can put into tick. And we're going to pass in color and the text. And all this macro is going to do is call the add on-screen debug message function. It just helps us do it a bit quicker, that's all. So I'm just going to check that, because it's under the G engine class, I'm just going to check that that's valid. So if that is valid, we can do and it's called add. It's not going to come up here, but here's a function. We'll be able to click on this. You hold control and click if you got writer. I'm not sure about Visual Studio. Show you the options for that function. So we've got a key, a time to display, and color. So the key would just be -1. Color is going to be the variable that we pass in, color. And then, actually no, sorry, there was time to display, wasn't it? So time to display would be -1 also, or actually I might make it, some things don't like -1. We'll just put it to 0.1 like that, and then it was color, wasn't it? Display color, yep. And then it's text, is a string. So let's make another one of that, and we'll call it time. So this is so we can display message to the screen for a set amount of time, and we'll add a time variable here, and the time will, you could just do this one and change it for tick, but it allows us to customize it a bit. Again, not required, just some helpful stuff, and we'll do an example of these. Now, let's go to our label and go to tick, and then we'll do some examples. So we're going to put in some example logs, but what we want to do first is check that we're actually got debugging on for the RTS player. So we're going to need our developer settings. So the way we get that is going to be const, because it's not editable at runtime, so it's going to be const. So we need it's RTS core settings. So it's going to add the include at the top of RTS core settings.h. So we'll just call that settings, and then we're just going to do something called get default, which is essentially getting that singleton type thing that we talked about. And then that's the core settings. That's it. That's our reference to our settings. So now we can look at those settings and see if we're debugging. Now, if we are debugging, what we're going to check next is if we're using the editor. Because we put those tags around those defines, I don't want to call them without, they won't exist, so you'll get an error if you don't. If you try and call them out, it is only if you're not using the editor, you know. The define was RTS player. There it is. So we're in tick, we're going to do tick. And then we just need to pass the color and the text. So it's going to be a string, so string. That's that one. And let's just copy that and we'll come down to begin play. Put another test in here. We'll use the time one. Time, and we just need to add a time on as the next variable, and just 10 seconds. And then in here, I might also just put a log so I can show you the log categories. So. Right, that should be it. So let's build, see if we've got any errors. Got some warnings. Oh, actually, I forgot. I forgot to do the CPP of the debug data. My bad. It's still going to have the class settings. It's got errors everywhere. We don't need any of that. What we do need is to define a log category, and it's RTS player. No, sorry, it's log RTS player. Whatever we used on the H file, log RTS player. Sorry about that. Try that again. All right, so those warnings we got. Get them. Anyway, those warnings are about the view plugin. So in our build for our RTS player, we have enhanced input and RTS core there, and it was saying that we're referencing those, but we're not including them in our project or our plugin, sorry, as a required addition. So in here, we can come in and underneath modules here, we'll just put comma, just put plugins. And then in here, inside curly brackets, we're just going to do the same as this, except this will be RTS core. And then we need to set the state of it, so it's going to be enabled. And then we do another comma here, copy the curly brackets into a new line, and change this to enhanced input. And that'll tell the plugin that these are required plugins for this plugin. Right, we should be good to go to the editor. If we go to project settings, we should now have RTS core settings, and there's our two tick things. So I'll just leave them off for now, and I'll turn player on. We press play. Our test tick to screen is going. So in our output log here, we should be able to search for log RTS player there. So that's and you can see that log that happened in the begin play. So if you come back to writer and we go to the log here, you can see the log there, but in here you'll have all your log categories. And it's basically extracting these from what's appeared in the logs, I think. But if you go to log, got log RTS player there. So if we just wanted to show those logs, like if we had it in tick, there'd be a heap of them. We could just go down to it, and then you can filter whatever log. Now in the previous video, I mentioned that our modifier wasn't working, and we should debug it. But I realized later after the video that we haven't actually implemented the interface, so that's why. And we're actually going to do that in the next plugin that we create, which is RTS entities. So we're not going to debug that for now because I know why it's not working. We set up the this interface here, but we didn't actually implement it anywhere, and that's to come. One other thing we can do is well, I just want to copy these to the core one. So go to data, debug data, yeah. And I'll change this to RTS core. And then we go to, in the game that's running, you can see the blue is the game state. So it's stopped on gameplay. But I just want to show you that we can, so this is where it's coming from, right? It's stating that. So let's set it up as a function, a debug function. So let's call it debug game phase. And we don't need that. Actually, no, we will need that because we can copy just cut this out and copy the string, save us, print it out. So let's, down the bottom, somewhere under private, let's set up a debug area. And in here, have, what I called it. And then we'll do the same thing with the settings. So check the settings. Pull the file out of here. Just typing it out. And put our if def here. Now this could be const. Always good to have const functions in tick. And I might just put a little note here. Clearly debug, but yeah, the idea. So now that's a debug we can leave in there, not cluttering up stuff with logs and stuff everywhere. And we can turn it off and on within the editor using the settings. And if we want to drill down to more specific settings, so say it was some feature in RTS core, like game phase, we could have another setting here. So well, let's do it. Why not? Let's just copy this and have this as debug RTS. Call it debug game phase. And then if we come back to here, all we need to do is check both. So now we need to have the RTS core switched on and the debug game phase switched on. So the reason why you'd have two like that is you may only want to debug game phase, so you can have just that one on, or you can turn everything off just by ticking this. So if every subcategory has this in front of it, you can turn all debugging off just by unticking one checkbox and leave these other ones ticked. I'll relaunch. I won't do a hot reload. And like oh, I didn't change the category. Sorry, I thought I changed the category to what I meant to do. I wanted to show you the categories. There you go. There's the different categories. I'm sure you've never seen it before. But now we can, so if we have all of these switched on and we play, anyway, that's probably the time. That's getting the logs. And then if we go into here and we switch off core logging, we don't get the game phase. I think we can change that to -1, so we only get the one. And then if we turn off the player logging, you can see it actually happened in there in runtime. Doesn't always work, but generally it does. We might just, anything I might just do is fix that log. So if we come debug data, I'm going to change this to -1. The other thing I'll show you is if you look in the default game.ini, you can see our core settings here, and here they are. You can actually change them in here as well. Neater. Getting the idea? Alright, we'll leave that there. Thanks for watching.